Last week, we began this series on relationships, and we looked at guys, and we kind of went after guys in all kinds of different ways in which we can step up. And today, ladies, it is your turn. So aren't you glad that you are here today? Now, I think a really good question is, what would qualify you? What would give you the right to talk to ladies? You know, full confession, I've never been a woman. Experientially, I don't know what that is all about, but I have, studied one for 30-some years and helped create one and put one into this world of ours who's in her early 30s. But here's the real reason why we're talking about this, because we believe that the Bible is God's reliable direction for us. And so it speaks to men and women, and I'm going to try to do the best job I can at reflecting of what we see in this book that we're calling Song of Solomon here, which is dedicated entirely to a relationship between one man and one woman. And we see them dating, and eventually they're going to get married, and we're going to see all of life on the other side of getting married as well. So ladies, as we talk about this, I will ask for a little bit of grace here as we get started. And know this too, I said this last week, and we should probably say it again. One of the things that we're big fans of here is that often we take ourselves too seriously and we don't take God seriously enough. So let's reverse those things. And so if we poke a little bit of fun at the human experience, just know where that's coming from, but we want to take God really seriously. And so I hope that what we talk about today communicates the value, ladies, that God places on you. Can I say this about the Bible too? The Bible has this reputation in the culture of our day that often goes like this. The Bible puts down women. Can I just tell you, the Bible, in every context in which it originally came, elevated women above any position that they found themselves in that place. And so that is not a truthful statement. And I hope and I pray that when we're through, you would see the value God places on you. So with that in mind, we're going to cover the same verses here that we did last week. We looked at it from the male perspective, and today we're going to look at it from the female perspective. She begins talking, and by the way, in the ancient world, to have a woman's speech in writing was completely unknown. But so here it is. Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. Haven't Sally memorized that in 4 different verses? My wife. For your love is more delightful than wine. Pleasing is the fragrance of your perfumes. Your name is like perfume poured out. And you're going to see this all the way through the book, but you see it just in a very, microcosm sort of way here right out of the chute. She begins, and you're going to see her set the tone of the relationship. And we mentioned this last week. Their relationship is one of mutuality. There's a mutual attraction. There is a mutual connection. There is a mutual pursuit. This is not one person playing offense trying to score and one person playing defense trying to prevent that. This is two people who are now in a relationship that is ultimately taking them somewhere, which will be for them a covenant relationship, a promise-based relationship called marriage. And what you see her doing here, even, in these first few words, is she's inviting him to step into a place in the relationship. Here, she's inviting him to act upon even his attraction. And so she is inviting him into the relationship. No wonder the young women love you. Take me away with you. Let us hurry. Let the king bring me into his chambers. And there again, you see her saying, let him. She's inviting him. She is involving him. And it plays out in this mutual relationship that they have. Here's what you're going to see. And you see right off the bat, she is his biggest cheerleader. You know what you will not see her being? His biggest critic. And there are times and ways in which we have the opportunity to make a choice between those two things, to be a cheerleader or to be a critic. And now I recognize this, and we're not going to let the guys off the hook, because there is a common, thing that can happen in relationships where guys sometimes abdicate responsibility and what they should be doing. And then, a wife maybe tries to rectify that And you know what? There are times to disagree. There are times to invite people to step up into their responsibilities. But the way in which that happens will say so much about the outcome of that. There's a word in the Bible that talks about being a critic, or kind of digging and digging and digging and trying to get somebody to do something in a real negative way. It's the word quarrelsome. You know, I want to know what the Hebrew word for quarrelsome is? Twitter. Actually, that's not in the Hebrew. But here's why I mention that. Because, I've been on Twitter. I don't actively post there, but I like to see what people are saying, especially in the church world and the spiritual world. You know what I've discovered in Twitter is that it is a cesspool of criticism. And people are calling other people all kinds of names and things like that. And you know what I have never seen in those kind of exchanges is it's somebody who's just been insulted and called a name, and there's been a dig after dig after dig after dig. I've never seen one person who goes, you know what, I've just come to my senses. I'm going to change my whole worldview, and I'm going to step up because I agree with you because you've been so mean to me. Thank you for doing that, and I'm just going to change everything. It has never happened. Now, you take that reality and drop it down into your relationships, and I would suggest to you, you're never going to see that outcome either. And so, ladies, especially wives, if you've seen maybe your husband abdicate responsibility and you're like, I wish he would step up. I wish he would take his responsibility. Can I just suggest not digging and digging and digging? The word quarrelsome in the Old Testament, in the book of Proverbs, is portrayed this way, that to be with a quarrelsome wife, digging and digging, digging, this again, that we're going to have disagreements, yes. Are there ways in which guys need to step up at times? Yes. But to live with a quarrelsome wife is like being in a house that has a constant drip. Drip, drip, drip. You know that in some parts of the world that's considered torture, right? That is intended to get people to divulge national secrets. So here's maybe a different strategy in those moments. And if you're a wife and you're saying, I wish he would step up, try this. Invite him to do so. Let him. And what that may mean is in those moments is rather than stepping in and feeling like you're pushing a wet noodle up a hill, to just step back and to create the space and to create a vacuum into which, God willing, he will step. But I'll tell you this, ladies, he wants to be your hero, and he wants to know that you are on his team, and he wants to know that you are on his side. And one of the ways that you could do that is to respect him. And in times where there are those disagreements, or there is that need for him to step up, respect still needs to be present, because what it will feel like if there's constant digging is not respect. And so maybe in those moments when you're longing for him to step up, you step back and create that space and invite him into it. You know, in the New Testament, the Apostle Paul in the book of Ephesians chapter 5 is talking about husbands and wives. And God, knowing what it is that the heart of humanity needs, gives some direction to husbands and to wives. To husbands, it says, husbands, and this is a high bar, love your wives as Christ loved the church. Wow. What does that mean? Jesus was willing to lay down his life for his bride, the church. Guys, I think we got the higher bar. But then you know what it says? Wives, respect your husbands. And so even in times of disagreement, in times when there needs to be a change in the dynamic, how that goes down is going to say a lot about how those things turn out. And so, ladies, if you want your husband to step up, don't cut him off at the knees by constant digging and constant critique. And one of the most common dynamics I've seen over the years, honestly, is men who have abdicated responsibility and women who, maybe out of responsibility and stepping up to that, have been more domineering rather than a relationship that is mutual and engaged by both. And if you want to correct that, you want to deal with that, you want to step into that, and you want your guy to step up, maybe it's time for you to step back. But even in moments of disagreement, he wants to know that you are on his team, that you are his biggest cheerleader. So, Respect him. Then it goes on, we rejoice and delight in you. We will praise your love more than wine. How right they are to adore you. We rejoice and delight, and this is coming from her friends, and this is a call for ladies to be connected in relationships. I believe that generally speaking, ladies, that comes easier to you than it does for us guys. But if you are looking for relationships, I would suggest this to you. If you don't have them, or you're looking for strong ones, or you're looking for people who are heading the same direction of following after the Jesus of the Bible, one of the great ways to do that through here is not in a room that's big like this, but it's through a small group where you can get to know people. And it's not a microwave experience, it's a crock pot experience where over time you can have people around you who support you. But you know what? Even in those environments, sometimes in small groups, there's weird people, who show up in small groups, and God will even use that sometimes. And if you're already a lady and you're in a small group, or a guy and you're in a small group, and you're trying to think, who's the weird person? I can't think of who that is. I got some bad news for you. But ladies, you need people around you who are going to be there for you and who are willing even to tell the truth about you. There's a place in the Bible, and this is one of the most valuable relational insights we can get. It says, faithful are the wounds of a friend. That we need to be able to hear a lot from the people that we know are for us. Because in some of the hard times, we don't want to hear anything that doesn't sound good in the moment. But we need those people to speak into our lives. And hopefully that's not all the time, every day. But may there be a place where we are connected to other people who are there for us. Dark am I, yet lovely, daughters of Jerusalem, dark like the tents of Kedar, like the tent curtains of Solomon. Do not stare at me because I am dark, because I am darkened by the sun. We talked about this last week back in the ancient world. One of the signs that you were poor and not well-to-do is that you had to work out in the sun. And so that, she's saying, I got a farmer stand here because I've had to work. And the people who were wealthy had more than they needed. They were a little plump and they were lighter in color. And so she's expressing some insecurity about the way she looks. But here's the thing that you are going to find is that she is not going to attach her identity entirely to the way that she looks. And in this day, I think there is such a constant messaging that says, especially to you ladies, that your value is attached to the way that you look. And that is not true. Your value is determined by the God who loves you, not to the way that you look. My mother's sons were angry with me and made me take care of the vineyards. My own vineyard I had to neglect. And, there's some things going on here. Notice how she says my mother's sons. Those are her brothers. She doesn't call them that. So apparently there's some relational struggle going on here. And they made her do some things. And there's no mention of her father in the entire book of Song of Solomon. So it could well be that she was raised in a single-parent home by a single mom. And single moms, mad respect for who you are and what you do and all that's on your plate, and you're kind of doing the work of two. And so I hope and pray you find encouragement here in this place. But here is somebody who has gone through that whole experience, and she's come out on the other side. And so this is somebody who's been through some things, and her character has been at work in those moments. How do you deal with conflict? How do you deal with responsibility? How do you deal with some of the hard things that come your way in your life? And so this is really a call, same call we had to guys. And ladies, it goes for you as well. Build your character. And it is in some of the real life moments in which our character is ultimately built and revealed. And so for her, she's going through hard things and she's coming out the other side. Here's sometimes as I meet with premarital couples, they'll say something like this, and I think they mean it positively. They'll say, we just lean on each other to the point that if one of us wasn't here, the other would just kind of crash to the ground. Can I just tell you, that's not positive, right? That's not a good thing. I think what you're seeing in this relationship is you have two people, a man and a woman, who could stand on their own, but they choose to join together in a relationship. And they don't need one another to hold each other up because their hearts and their character have been built through real life, and now they choose to stand together. This also raises a question here, right? She's talking about being out in the vineyards. One of the common questions that I get asked through the years goes something like this. Is it okay for, a mom who's trying to follow after Jesus in a family to work outside of the home? Is that okay? Well, there's a doctrine in the Bible called the priesthood of the believer, which means that if you're in a relationship with God, you are in a relationship with him, and you don't need my permission to do any of that. And I would say that there's not a one-size-fits-all answer to that. And you have gifts and talents and abilities, and if in the context of a family you talk about the mom going to work, great. If you talk about that and come to the conclusion that it's better for mom to be home with the kids, great. Or anywhere in between. I think that is something that needs to be applied with wisdom and direction within the context of a family. And by the way, in the Bible, there are some women who are named who were very successful business women, and they were key players in the life of the early church. A couple of their names, Phoebe and Lydia, and they made a huge impact for the sake of the kingdom. And they were women who were working and were very successful in that arena. So build your character. Tell me, you whom I love, where do you graze your flock and where do you rest your sheep at midday? Why should I be like the veiled women besides the flock of your friend? She's positioning herself to be pursued. She's saying, I got some goats and you have some places where goats, need to graze. Is it all right if I bring my goats over there? This is like somebody in the context of church saying, that looks like a guy who looks like perfume well poured out. He looks like a guy that I might like to know. So maybe I'll volunteer in the same area. That's the kind of thing that's happening here. We're saying, I'm going to put my life in the path of his life so that maybe this initial attraction turns into something more. And she's talking about the veiled women. Do you know what the veiled women were in those days? That was a prostitute. And so what she's saying to him on this day is, you know what? I am not going to lower my standard. And I'm not going to try to catch you with my body. She's wanting somebody to pursue her heart. And there is going to be a physical part to their relationship, but it's following a process. And when we jump the gun on the physical part, what often happens is we become oblivious to some of the things that we should have seen a lot earlier, but we've jumped to the place that is the ultimate and full expression of a heart and soul to one another in the context of a covenant relationship called marriage. But she is talking to him about what she's going to do with her flocks and saying, you know what, I'm secure in who I am. And I'm looking for a guy to pursue me, all of me. And there'll be a time and a place for a physical relationship later, but it is not here and now. And so I think this is a call to secure your identity. And your identity, ladies, is never tied to a man. It is tied to the heart of God and what he thinks about you. And being in a relationship with a guy, awesome. But you know what? That does not define you. And it does not tell you who you are. And you know what happens when we use our bodies to catch somebody? The challenge that comes along with that is that we have to keep them with our bodies. Have you noticed, if you're on the dark side of 18, that time is not on your side with that? And again, if we can kind of poke fun at the human experience here, this is true, I think, for everybody. On your wedding day, both the bride and the groom, they look as good as they're ever going to look in their lives. That guy's wearing a tuxedo or a nice suit probably for the last time in his whole life. And ladies, you've been poured into a dress that makes it hard to breathe sometimes. And you've been on a liquid fast and you got a spray tan. And maybe you have somebody else's hair attached to your hair as well on that day. I don't know about that. And it's awesome and you look beautiful and amazing. But then there's every day after that, right? And things only progress in one direction. And you got to give that hair back, eventually. And it's just kind of this long decline. And that's why pursuing, appearance is not really a solid foundation on which to build a relationship. But if you're pursuing somebody's heart, as you get older, and you look in the mirror and you realize, man, I ain't what I used to be. But it's not about that. It is about connecting a heart to somebody else and journeying together with them. So secure your identity in who you are in God. And then the friends say, if you do not know, most beautiful of women, follow the tracks of the sheep and graze your young goats by the tents of the shepherd. Her friends are saying, we applaud this relationship. We see this relationship bringing out the best in you. I liken you, my darling, to a mare among Pharaoh's chariot horses. Your cheeks are beautiful with earrings, your neck strings of jewels. We will make earrings of gold studded with silver. He's got out his hot glue gun. He's bedazzling her some earrings here. He's given her gifts. And she says, while the king was at his table, my perfume spread its fragrance. My beloved is to me a sachet of myrrh resting between my breasts. My beloved is to me a cluster of henna blossoms from the vineyards of En-Gedi. What is that? En-Gedi is an oasis. And last week we talked about, guys, are you creating an oasis for your girl? And if you're married, right, is that refreshing? Is it renewing? Is it something that strengthens her? What walks in the room when you walk in the room? What she's saying here is that when he walks in the room, it's like being on vacation. It's like being in that beautiful place, and it is refreshing. And ladies, you know, you're called to create En-Gedi, just like us guys are called to create En-Gedi. And so maybe if he comes home and he's looking for a little bit of En-Gedi, you know, and you say to her that, you know, hey, let's have some En-Gedi. And if she says, hey, you haven't done your part, En-Gedi away from me, that just reviewed last week. But what walks in the room with you guys? And I would say this, ladies, what kind of En-Gedi are you creating? So maybe even one day when he, you know, walks in the room, how do you greet him? And what does that exchange look like? Is it, here's the 19 things that you didn't do today? Or you can choose to be his cheerleader. And yeah, there might be some things to talk about, but how that goes down is going to be the key to how that turns out. And ladies, I would suggest this to you, that oftentimes in a relationship, you are the tone setter. You are. And so often you're really good at it. And there's an opportunity for you to set a tone that creates that oasis for him. And I dare you, ladies, to ask your husband, what creates En-Gedi for you? Now, there's going to be one answer that's going to be a very common answer to that. But there'll probably be something else in addition to that. But that might be a good thing for you to talk about together. Be a tone setter. And he says, how beautiful you are, my darling. Oh, how beautiful. Your eyes are like doves. He comments on her beauty. And we said this last week, just a quick, aside to men. Men who are married, your wife is your standard of beauty. Your wife is your type. And it would be wise for you to communicate your attraction to her and find ways to communicate her beauty to her. But he also talks about her eyes are like doves. Doves in the ancient world and still today are a symbol of peace. And so he's also saying that she is peace to me. That he recognizes how special this one relationship is. And there is a place in the Bible, all the way back at the beginning, in the book of Genesis, when God creates humanity. He creates first Adam and then Eve. And when Adam is put to sleep and Eve is created and Adam wakes up and he looks at this woman, you know what he says? This is charged with emotions. He said, this is now bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh, which means almost nothing to us in this day. I get it. Like, what? If we were going to translate that and maybe put it into our context, it is Adam waking up and looking at this person who has been given to him as a gift. And he goes, great job, God. This is awesome. Awesome. You know what God did not do in the Garden of Eden? It was not an episode of The Bachelor. You all familiar with The Bachelor? Right, this harem mentality where there's like 20 women and one guy, and they walk around, he goes with each of them and lies to all of them, and then, lies to each and every one. Then there's this weird rose ceremony, and, God didn't do that and say, okay, all the ones you didn't choose, we're going to send them to hell, and here's the one that you choose, and that is all good. No, God said, here's the one. And one of the expressions that I've often put into the vows that people exchange on a platform like this goes something like this, and it's to both the groom and the bride, that I receive you as God's perfect gift for me. And that's what he's saying on this day. That you are the one. And guys, you want to create the environment in which her heart and life comes alive. Let her know that she is the one. But her identity is not tied to how she looks. Her identity is not found in this man. And ladies, I am sorry that you live in a time where so much of your value is communicated to you by the way that you look. And there are magazines covers that back not that long ago were pictures taken of actual human beings and then touched up to be unrealistic. But nowadays, we don't even need that because we got AI. And so now we're creating these images that aren't even people. And that's the standard and the bar. And so often in this day, it is communicated to you that you are as valuable as you look. Ladies, that is a lie. You are valuable. End of sentence. You are valuable because you were created in the image of God. You are valuable. And there is a commonality in our culture that I think is tearing us down. For young ladies especially, this is from September of 23. From Harvard University. Exposure to videos and photos on social media platforms can contribute to body dissatisfaction, eating disorders. Teen and adolescent girls especially can lead to serious mental health issues, including suicidal behavior. Amanda Raffoul says this: the more teenage girls are on social media and exposed to image-based social media, and particularly, the more likely they are to have a poor body image. You are not as valuable as you look. Your value is secure in God. And that's why she goes on to say, I'm a rose of Sharon, a lily in the valleys. She is confident in who she is. And how do we determine the value of anything? You think about our day. Maybe this is gospel according to eBay. You put something out there trying to sell it. You know how valuable it is? It's whatever somebody's willing to pay for it. And you may think it's one thing, but the reality may be something different. Do you know what God paid for you, ladies? You are worth Jesus leaving heaven and coming to this broken world and laying down his life so that you can belong to him. That's how valuable you are. Secure your identity in him. And if we can anchor our souls to that, so much of what plays out in our relationships, and especially in this cultural moment, will be so much better. Daughters of Jerusalem, I charge you by the gazelles and by the does of the field, do not arouse or awaken love until it so desires. And here again, she's talking about being willing to wait for. That there is a physical part of the relationship, and that's going to be talked about next week, but it's not here and now, and so she is worth waiting for. And if we thought, that good-looking people who have, all kinds of relationships of every, aspect under the sun, if that were the life and the ultimate dream, where would we look? I think we'd look to Hollywood. Anyone notice that Hollywood is a dumpster fire of relationships staying together? Remember one time on the news, they're like, they've been together 3 years. Oh, shocking. Yesterday, there was a celebration of people who just were together 50 years, and they had the renewal of their vows to say, I'd do it all over again. That is anchored in something deeper than how somebody looks and the nature of a physical relationship with each other. And so she is worth waiting for. And that means living your value, to be treated with care. So what does all this mean? And maybe in this cultural moment, if I was going to summarize all of what this means and apply it to you ladies, it would be this. You are who Jesus says you are. And you are valuable. And you should be treated as valuable. So here's what we're going to do as we close. I'm going to ask everybody to stand up. Everybody. And usually when we close, we pray, spontaneously. We just pray to God. But this last week, as I was thinking about all of this, I wrote down some words as a prayer over the ladies here today. Men, there's a little bit for you at the end as well for us. But would you pray together with me? Women of Washington Heights, may you never be defined by what this world or this cultural moment tells you you should be or what you are. May you walk in a humble confidence that comes from your identity in Jesus. You are valuable as you are, and may you be treated as valuable. You are precious, and may you be honored as such. You are worth waiting for, and you are worth pursuing. And God, liberate ladies from any lies of this day so that they can walk toward their God-given potential. I pray for women who are waiting on you to answer their prayers. Help them to stand steadfast and strong as they trust in you. Help them to wait patiently for your purposes and your promises to be fulfilled in their lives. Lord, I pray for women who feel rejected, abandoned, and alone. Help them to know that you will never reject or forsake them. Hide them under the shadow of your wings and give them strength and comfort in the middle of their difficult circumstances. I pray for women who are grieving right now. Be their comfort and their strength. Let them know that you are by their side and that you see every tear that they shed. I pray for women who are searching spiritually for that, satisfy that longing and hunger in their souls. May it ultimately lead them to you and your great love for them, knowing that we were made for that relationship. I pray for ladies that are growing in their faith. Let their faith become unshakable. Fill them with confidence in the character of our great God. May they seek the kingdom of God and your righteousness and discover, as you have promised, all the other things will be added to them. May each lady know that their primary concern is to become the woman God created them to be. And may we as men, whether we know it or not, know that's all we need them to be. And may we be a help to them on that journey. Help every husband to see his wife as your perfect gift for him. And help men to see all the other ladies as sisters that are valuable, to be honored, to be protected, and to be encouraged. And all of this we ask and pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Thanks for being here. We'll see you soon. Have a great week.